Jane Eyre is a novel by the English writer Charlotte Brontë. It was published in 1847. The novel revolutionized prose fiction by being the first to focus on its protagonist's moral and spiritual development through an intimate first-person narrative where actions and events are colored by psychological intensity. Charlotte Brontë has been called the first historian of the private consciousness and the literary ancestors of writers like James Joyce. The book contains elements of social criticism with a strong sense of Christian morality at its core, and it is considered by many to be ahead of its time because of Jane's individualistic character and how the novel approaches the topics of class, sexuality, religion and feminism. Along with Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, is one of the most famous romance novels. Here is a brief summary of the story. The book follows the life of an orphan girl, Jane. We learn that even though Jane is a simple and plain girl, she has been battling struggles all her life. The story takes us through the transformation from an isolated orphan to a strong, independent woman. Jane's childhood has been full of struggles and hardships. She lives with her abusive and cruel aunt, Mrs. Reed. No one at the house is kind to her except for her servant Bessie. One day, her aunt locks her up in the Red Room where her uncle Reed died. This serves as a traumatic experience for Jane, and she is eventually sent to Lowood School. However, Jane Eyre tells us that her experience there is also far from relaxing. A headmaster is a corrupt man who starves their children and uses the school funds for her personal gains. The school faces an epidemic where many students pass away, and thus arrives a new headmaster. Things get better after that Jane completes her education and also teaches there for 2 years. Next, she moves to Thornfield to work as a governess. Mr. Rochester is Jane's employer, with whom Jane starts falling in love. A fire breaks out at the Manor, and Jane saves Mr. Rochester. Finally, Mr. Rochester proposes to Jane and she accepts. But she learns at the altar that Mr. Rochester has a wife, Bertha, the same one who tried to set the house on fire. Upon learning this, Jane leaves Mr. Rochester, refusing to marry a married man. Then she rebuilds her life from scratch up with the help of Mary, Diana and St. John. They turn out to be her cousins. St. John also proposes to Jane, but she declines as she's not in love with him. Upon realizing that she still loves Mr. Rochester, she goes back to Thornfield to witness the house has been burned down. She discovers that Mr. Rochester's wife passed away in the fire and he is now blind. Nonetheless, Jane Eyre books ends with both of them marrying and having a son together. At the end, she finally finds true love and lives happily.